Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today it finally happened. I have leveled up to level 73 in Pokemon Go. Now I've seen your guys' many comments over the past few months asking, Henry, when will you finally level up? And well, today is finally that day. Today I'm going to be showcasing a strong anti-meta Pokemon that I was absolutely frying the Ultra Fantasy Cup with, and that is level 50 Slurpuff. Slurpuff is amazing coverage with Fairy Wind, Energy Ball, and Flamethrower. I paired it up with a Turtonator and an Empoleon, and it felt like a very strong, consistent team for this Fantasy Cup. So, without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and I queue into one of my fellow co-casters in the first match, Caleb Peng. It's a very strong lead for me. Turtonator into Fortress. He's going to throw a Volt Switch, Save Switch into Waterfall Primarina, and that allows me to bank an entire Overheat for later and send in Empoleon. Empoleon is a complete wall to energy from Primarina. Primarina can fire off back-to-back Hydro Cannons, but Empoleon's going to be able to hang on no problem. I can now fire off the Drill Peck. This is going to be no shielded, and that's going to put Primarina very low. It actually looks like I should be able to get a farm down here. Then I can exit with a ton of energy on this Empoleon. Hydro Cannon is going to land. I commit to the farm down, but Primarina hangs on. I was too greedy, 1 HP remaining, and that misplay is going to cost me switch advantage. I decide that I may as well take this as an opportunity to get up energy on Slurpuff. In comes the Fortress. Fortress will be able to debuff Slurpuff, but Slurpuff is still able to hit for double super effective damage with the Flamethrower. That's not something my opponent can let land. They go for the Rock Tomb. Slurpuff tanks that so comfortably, and now I'm just going to be full sending the Flamethrower. Flamethrower is going to be shielded up by the Fortress. I throw a Fairy Wind, and now I'm going to snipe with a Bank Charge attack on the Turtonator. I go for the bait. It's too risky for them to try and no shield, and now my attack stat is still going to be intact. Had I overheated, I would be at -2. But I can get some really big Incinerate damage. He's going to fire off the Rock Tomb, pivot out. In the back is going to be a Florges. At this point, this game should be over. -1 overheat is going to do a lot of damage onto that Florges. Florges gets absolutely rocked. I reach for overheat number 2, but they're going to fire off energy. I'm going to tank whatever it is they throw. It's going to be a Disarming Voice. I can now go for the -3 overheat. This should take the knockout, and then when Fortress comes in, I can just pivot back into the Slurpuff. In comes Slurpuff. We get the snipe with the Flamethrower, and this game is over. Double super effective damage, KOing the Fortress, and that's going to be a Game 1 win. We move to game number 2. Turtonator this time going to be greeted on the lead with a Shadow Flagon. That's a very bad matchup. I save switch into Slurpuff. Out comes a Tinkaton. And unfortunately, this is not a steel type the Slurpuff can beat. Even with super effective Flamethrower, Gigaton Hammer is just simply too good of a move. Flamethrower can 2-shot, but Gigaton Hammer is definitely going to 1-shot. Or if not, I'm barely going to survive and get Fairy Winded down after. So I have a pretty straightforward game plan here. I'm going to be double shielding. If my opponent ever doesn't match my shields, I can win switch advantage, and then I'll have a pretty healthy Slurpuff. But if they do double shield, I'm going to try and catch Gigaton back onto the Turtonator. If I can successfully waste my opponent's energy, I feel like I could be in a pretty good spot. At this point, I'm pretty confident they're double shielding, so I will go for the Energy Ball bait. The Energy Ball bait is successful. I pivot into the Turtonator. I don't get the catch, and back out comes the Flygon. Flygon has energy. This is going to hurt. This is super effective damage. Twister connects. Turtonator survives. And just like that, I've won switch advantage, because this Dragon Claw is going to erase Shadow Flygon from the field of play. So even though they have all that stored energy on Tinkaton, that energy is only ever going to get thrown into the Empoleon. And Bulldoze, not really a problem for an Ultra League Empoleon. In comes Florges as their final Pokemon. Florges forced to throw energy to prevent the overheat, but my opponent is just simply too weak now to Empoleon. Empoleon can hit the field. Florges should be walled. In this meta, they're probably running either Disarming Voice or Moonblast, which means their charge stacks, they can't really do much of anything. I actually decide to reset the debuff and go for the catch onto the Slurpuff. This means that Slurpuff is going to get sacrificed to a Gigaton Hammer, but I'm very okay with that. My opponent stays in. I can fire off the -1 Flamethrower. Flamethrower will not take the knockout. My opponent's going to farm up even more, and they didn't realize that they lost charge stack priority to the Slurpuff. Slurpuff able to take the knockout with Energy Ball. That was actually a common theme throughout my sets. People had no idea what Slurpuff's attack stat was, and Slurpuff can actually win a couple CFB ties that you might not expect. Bulldoze will take the knockout, but I just have so much energy stored on this Empoleon. I believe back-to-back Hydro Cannons. Hydro Cannon connects. Tinkaton is going to get KO'd, and we're able to take the win. We move to the next match. Turtonator going to be greeted this time with a Stunfisk. This is a very good lead matchup. I don't really want to debuff my attack just yet, so I will go for the Dragon Claw bait, and my opponent makes a beautiful catch and sneak onto Primarina. Suddenly, I very much regret not going for the Overheat, because Overheat at least would have done a little bit of damage. I throw one more Incinerate to rebank some energy, send in the Empoleon. Empoleon is a very strong answer to Primarina, but man, having all that energy do basically no damage onto the Primarina is pretty devastating. Drill Peck will not knock out here. Primarina, it does have okay bulk as far as at least by Ultra Fantasy standards. It's not amazing, but it will be able to survive. Hydro Cannon lands. I look for the farm down, but my opponent's going to pivot out and send in Corviknight. So my opponent's running ABA Steel. They're ABA weak to the Turtonator. It's actually the Shadow Corviknight as well, but it's time. In comes Slurpuff. I have to cross my fingers and hope my opponent is not running Iron Head. Please don't have Iron Head. It's just an Air Cutter, and they do not get the boost. Slurpuff is quite bulky in the Ultra League, so by my opponent not getting the boost, I think I can actually survive 2 more Shadow Air Cutters. An Air Cutter does feel like a substantially more real move coming from a Shadow Corviknight than from the regular. Air Cutter lands, they don't boost again, and I should be able to survive. My opponent's only play at this point is to catch on Primarina, so I pivot into the Turtonator, reading the catch attempt. We get the Incinerate down, and this game is over. I have the Flamethrower banked on the Slurpuff for later, and now I'm pretty close to an overheat on my Turtonator. This is enough for an Earthquake. I have to respect it. It would just do way too much damage. My opponent will go for the Rock Slide bait. Now, this cannot be an Earthquake. It can only be a Rock Slide. Rock Slide will do a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but I will be able to hang on. I build up to 100 energy, full send the Overheat. Overheat will be taking the knockout here. My opponent puts up the shield, and I get to go for the combo play with the Slurpuff. The Flamethrower that I stored from earlier coming in clutch. Flamethrower lands, Stunfisk survives on 1 HP, and back in comes the Shadow Corviknight. I bring in the Turtonator. I'm a little bit worried about my health here as I fire off the Overheat. Am I in too much out of range? If yes, there's a chance I lose. In comes the Stunfisk. I survive the 2 mud shots, and I'm not at 1 HP. Which means I can shield, take the 1 HP of damage through the shield, the Incinerate KOs, and take the win. We pick up a pretty negative lead in the next match, leading Turtonator into Giratina. Now this matchup is not the worst for Turtonator, because Turtonator can hit back with the Dragon Claw, but it's definitely not an amazing matchup overall, as unfortunately the Shadow Claws add up quite a bit neutrally, and Dragon Claw will hit for devastating damage. I'm going to be no shielding, I can survive whatever they throw. My opponent goes for an Ancient Power, and I make a critical error. I send in Slurpuff. On this team, the save switch should typically be Empoleon. Empoleon doesn't really have any truly negative matchups outside of maybe Melmetal, but even that it can fight back against. Slurpuff, if you run into a Turtonator like I do here, you are completely walled. Slurpuff does learn Play Rough, but I wanted to run Energy Ball Flamethrower to have coverage. Unfortunately, coverage isn't doing anything for me here, as I'm getting completely walled off. This Turtonator is on Flash Cannon. My poor Slurpuff gets erased. I send in my Turtonator, and I lose Charge Attack priority. That's probably a coin flip CMP tie. My opponent on Brutal Swing, but that is very unfortunate to lose that cap tie there. I fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw will take the knockout, but now I have almost no health remaining on the Turtonator. Back in comes the Giratina. I pivot into the Empoleon. My opponent already showed Ancient Power. I'd be very surprised if they were Ancient Power Shadow Sneak. They are Ancient Power and Dragon Claw. I'm going to be no shielding, just trusting in the fact that if I hold on to the shields, even though I don't have a lot of HP, I should be able to do pretty okay here. I'm just going to look for a full farm down. My opponent will make an Ancient Power. That's going to finally pressure away a shield, and they should look to pivot. There's the pivot. It's Corviknight in the back. There might actually be a chance here. This is going to be very, very difficult, but I have a ton of energy on this Empoleon, and I still have a Protect Shield remaining. Air Cutter's not going to take the knockout. I should be able to get both Hydros. First will land, second will probably get the shield, and then it's shield parity. I know I don't have a lot of HP left on the Turtonator, but I have to hope that Turtonator will be able to take home this win. Hydro number 2 will get the shield. There's the pivot. In comes Turtonator. My opponent's going to send in Giratina. Giratina gets farmed down, but I don't have the charge stack loaded. I'm just simply too low, and unfortunately, we will lose that game. The decision to save switch to Slurpuff instead of the Empoleon definitely came back to bite me. We get an amazing lead in the next match, leading Turtonator into Melmetal. My opponent save switches into Giratina, and I'm more than happy just to stay in here and play out this matchup. Giratina will fire off the Dragon Claw. I'm going to throw a Dragon Claw of my own. If my opponent shields, I should be able to outpace and make it to a second Dragon Claw. If they no shield, then I'm actually going to send in the Slurpuff. And that's because Slurpuff is a very good damage sponge to energy from the Giratina, and when my opponent brings back in the Melmetal, I can obviously hit for big super effective damage with the Flamethrower. Switch timer is up, in comes Melmetal, and it's Flamethrower time. Flamethrower is going to hit for huge damage out of the Melmetal. My opponent can probably knock out with the Double Iron Bash here. It's going to be very close. Double Iron Bash, a pretty decent move. It's going to connect. I barely survive. I commit to the Flamethrower, but I'm not able to get there. Now, I just get to bring back in the Turtonator and go for farm. Unfortunately, Incinerate is a significantly less powerful move on this new system because they changed how damage registration works. So, a lot of the times, if you're against a 2-turn move, an opponent can throw 2 Shadow Claws, for example, pivot out, and the Incinerate damage transfers onto the Mon that's switched in. So, even though Incinerate is worse on this new system, Turtonator's typing just makes it so incredibly strong for this meta. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon. It's going to be Primarina once again. Waterfall Primarina, a very common Pokemon. It's one of the reasons why I did want to have both Energy Ball on the Slurpuff and just have Empoleon. Empoleon's defensive typing just makes this such a dominant win over Primarina. Even though Primarina's up a shield, it's just simply not going to matter. Empoleon gets to spam out Drill Peck after Drill Peck. The Hydros really do not add up a lot, and all I have to do is just watch for a potential catch. So I farm up, there's the catch attempt, Melmetal is going to get farmed down, and back in comes the Primarina. The Primarina re-hit the field so fast that I didn't honestly react in time to click my Drill Peck. So a bit of a misplay there by me, but luckily we should be pretty close to an overheat on the Turtonator. So Empoleon will fall. Turtonator turns out already had the overheat. This is resisted, but Primarina, it's never surviving. Overheat, KOs Primarina, and we're able to get the win. We move to the next match. Turtonator going to be leading into XL Orthworm. This is an incredibly cool pick. This is a Pokemon that I actually really wanted to try in this meta, but unfortunately, I don't have nearly enough Orthworm XLs. I'm like 250 XLs short. I believe Orthworm was only ever released in raids, so it's pretty difficult to get those XLs, so mad props to this trainer. They clearly went hard for it. They end up no shielding, getting KO'd by the overheat. In comes Mimikyu, and I will fire off a Dragon Claw right away just to break the disguise. And once the disguise is broken, it feels like the rest of the game can begin. Disguise is broken, I pivot into Empoleon, and my opponent is going to save the Mimikyu and send in Shadow alone with the Sandslash. This is kind of an awkward spot for me to be in. The Sandslash should be guaranteed to land a Drill Run. And if a Drill Run lands, then Empoleon is not going to be nearly as effective of a Mimikyu counter. I put up the shield as they go for the first Drill Run. I can look to farm up, but unfortunately my switch timer is not going to be up in time. It's going to be so close, but they should now have the Drill Run. Drill Run should basically knock me out, but they overfarm by 1. My switch timer just comes up, and I'm able to save it and catch onto the Slurpuff. Slurpuff not going to mind a Drill Run whatsoever. Sandslash going to lose charge attack priority. The Slurpuff wins an annoying amount of CMP ties, and Sandslash will fall. All that's left now is the Mimikyu. Mimikyu is going to win charge attack priority over the Slurpuff, and unfortunately, I don't think Slurpuff will survive. They go for the play rough. I'm definitely not surviving that, and this is going to be a very tricky game to win. In comes the Empoleon. I fire off the Hydro Cannon. I could guarantee the win with a catch. I'm going to predict they do 3 Shadow Claws and go for the catch then. But they throw after 2. This Shadow Sneak, it'll come very close to knocking me out. Shadow Sneak lands, Empoleon falls. No, I survived, but I don't get the move. In comes Turtonator. We race to the overheat, and I lose charge attack priority. I just needed to switch there. Once the Empoleon survived, I needed to pivot out, but I thought I had the Hydro Cannon. Unfortunately, I did not. What a close game, but unfortunately, the win just slipped away. We pick up a very negative lead in the next match, leading Turtonator into Primarina. I save switch to the Slurpuff. My opponent responds with Galarian Stunfisk. This is one of the steel types the Slurpuff can beat. Flamethrower lands, nice damage onto the XL G-Fisk, and now I can just look to overfarm. I decide that I will respect the Earthquake here. My opponent does end up going for the full send, and I farmed them into a range where Flamethrower should just about take the knockout. This to me feels like a pretty guaranteed shield, so I will go for the Energy Ball bait, but they call it. What a call! I get the Energy Ball debuff, but realistically that's not going to help much because my fast attack pressure here is Fairy Wind, which is doing basically nothing. It ends up being another CMP tie, and now I have to decide, will I double shield? I decide that I'm going to play for switch advantage no matter what, so I'm going to overfarm quite a bit, and my opponent ends up just settling for a Rock Slide. Rock Slide will never take the knockout here. It will put the Slurpuff pretty low, but I can double up on the Energy Balls, and now I'm guaranteed to win switch advantage. The Primarina did bank a Hydro Cannon. I'm pretty confident Primarina will win charge attack priority, so I'm just going to throw 1 Fairy Wind and the Energy Ball when they bring it in. They're just going to undertap. I would have lost charge attack priority anyway, but now they don't have any energy. With switch advantage 1, I can put Empoleon on the Primarina. Empoleon hits the field. In the back, it's Cobalion, and I should be in a pretty good position. Cobalion can fire off Stone Edge, but Stone Edge is a move that XL Turtonator can survive. And now I can build up to 100 energy and fire off the overheat. As long as I get the shield here, the game is over. My opponent is unable to win, and I do get the shield. My opponent tries for the farm down. I guess they did not remember that I threw an Incinerate to start the game, but I make a second overheat, take the knockout, and this was already going to be a win no matter what. because I had an Empoleon with energy, but now it's definitely going to be a win as this poor Primarina is stuck on the Empoleon. It feels like that's been a lot of these games. If you end up getting their Primarina on your Empoleon, you're just going to be in such a commandingly dominant position. Drill Peck number 1 lands. Drill Peck number 2 is going to be followed shortly thereafter. Primarina is going to fall, and that's going to be the game. Hopping into the final match, we're going to be leading Turtonator into Galarian Weezing, and it's the Shadow Weezing at that. Shadow Weezing, a very cool Pokemon. Turtonator does have quite a bit of play here, although my opponent only ends up throwing on 6. That was a bit of a surprise. They go for Sludge. I decide I'm going to undertap and just full send the Overheat. Now, in the middle of these battles, there was a ton of login issues for Pokemon Go, so it ended up logging me out and re-logging me back in a bunch of times. I decided to throw 1 Incinerate as they bring in Shadow Kingdra, and then send in Empoleon. Empoleon is going to be a wall to all possible charge attacks Kingdra can learn, but Outrage, even though it's resisted, is still going to hit for a ton of damage. I'm just trusting in the fact that I still have the Turtonator, so if it's a matchup that's like really bad for the Slurpuff in the back, then hopefully Turtonator with some shields will still be able to do pretty well. And it will be Turtonator with a shield advantage. The Drill Peck is going to be shielded. Very nice overfarm there from the Kingdra. I assume they're probably on Surf plus Outrage, so Surf will take the KO. And now I'll get to send in the Slurpuff. In comes Slurpuff in the back. Oh no, it's Turtonator, but I still have my own Turtonator. I'm very low, but since Incinerate is double resisted, I should at least be able to make 1 Dragon Claw. My opponent's on Brutal Swing as well. Oh, this could not be good. Brutal Swing means they're very spammy. I fire off the Dragon Claw. They no shield, and by landing that, the game is just immediately over. It doesn't really matter what else happens in this game. By landing a Dragon Claw in this matchup, I still have the Protect Shield as well. My opponent's just simply too low. They end up firing off energy, maybe worried that I would have made 1 final Dragon Claw. I think they probably could have farmed down, but either way, they're just way too low on the Turtonator. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, I ended up having really nice results with this team. Unfortunately, I don't know how much more of Ultra Fantasy I'm going to be able to play because the queue times were absolutely brutal. I ended up streaming for about 2 hours, and I think I got 7 games across those 2 hours. So, unfortunately, it might be difficult for me to get a lot of Ultra Fantasy videos out this week. I will try my best. I was able to get enough footage for a second Ultra Fantasy video, so there'll be one today on Wednesday, another one on Thursday. Outside of that, I might have to rely a bit more on viewer battle submissions this week. So if you're running something interesting, something spicy in the Ultra Fantasy Cup, definitely do check out the battle submission form. It's in the description of every video, and that's something I'll definitely be checking out this week because, man, those queue times were rough, but the meta does look really fun. I think there's a lot of fun, flexible Pokemon. This does really feel like a meta where if you've built a lot of weird XL Pokemon for the Ultra League, then this is kind of your moment to shine. Pokemon like Mimikyu, Slurpuff, Turtonator, Galarian, Stunfisk, Registeel all serve to be these like heavy XL options, but then there are some budget options too. There's obviously the Giratinas of the world, there's the Tapu Finis, the Primarinas, Melmetal is a budget option. Melmetal is probably the easiest Pokemon of any of these to get. So I do think there are budget options for people who don't have a lot of those XL heavy Pokemon. The queue times were rough, but the meta did feel very fun. I feel like every time there is an Ultra Fantasy Cup, it ends up being a pretty enjoyable meta, and this iteration of Ultra Fantasy, even with some new faces on the block with Slurpuff, Mimikyu, and the newly buffed Dynamic Punch Melmetal, it still feels like a very fun meta to play. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.